You know the feeling. It happens in an instant. Maybe you get some unwanted attention, you make a clumsy mistake, or you just have a moment of pure embarrassment. And then, there it is. That wave of heat spreading across your face, your neck, even your chest. It's a blush. An involuntary, totally uncontrollable, and deeply human reaction. But behind this everyday experience, there's a profound biological mystery that's puzzled scientists for centuries. So, let's dive into the fascinating science behind this uniquely human reaction.
And get this, over 150 years ago, Charles Darwin himself was absolutely captivated by this. He actually dedicated a whole chapter of his work, The Expression of the Emotions in Man and Animals, just to blushing. He saw it as something truly special, a signal that really set us humans apart from every other species on the planet. He even noticed that it appeared in people all over the world, and even in those born blind, which told him it had to be an innate, inherited trait.
Darwin's fascination really sets up our big question here. I mean, if blushing reveals our innermost feelings, our vulnerability, our shame, why on earth does it even exist? How does our body pull off this sudden, localized flood of color completely against our will? And what possible purpose could this weirdly honest signal actually serve? We're going to unravel this puzzle piece by piece.
Here's how we're going to break it down. We'll start with the biological paradox right at the heart of the blush. Then, we'll dig into its surprising evolutionary advantage as a really powerful social tool. We'll also take a look at the darker side, when this natural response becomes a psychological burden. And finally, we'll wrap up by thinking about what this involuntary truth really tells us about what it means to be human.
Okay, let's get into the mechanics. The way a blush actually happens is completely counterintuitive. It goes against the standard operating procedures of our own nervous system. It's a genuine biological paradox.
So to get this paradox, we first need to talk about the sympathetic nervous system, or the SNS. Think of this as your body's emergency response team. When you're faced with a threat or even just stress, it kicks into high gear. Your heart rate goes up and, crucially, it causes something called vasoconstriction. That just means it tightens up the blood vessels, especially in your skin, to push blood away from the surface and toward your big muscles. It's getting you ready to either fight or run.
And here, this is where it gets really weird. Here's the core contradiction. The very same system that causes vasoconstriction, the tightening, everywhere else in your body does the exact opposite in your face during an emotional moment. Instead of tightening, the blood vessels in your face dilate. They relax and expand, causing a massive rush of blood to the surface. It's the same trigger, the same nervous system, but a totally opposite effect. So how is that even possible?
Well, the initial signal path is pretty straightforward. First, there's an emotional trigger, like embarrassment or maybe even getting a compliment you weren't expecting. And that gets processed in your brain. This sends a nerve signal down through your sympathetic nervous system. And in response, your body releases the hormone adrenaline, you might also know it as epinephrine, right into your bloodstream. This is your classic fight-or-flight hormone.
So here's the crucial part. The key isn't the signal itself, it's the receiver. While most blood vessels in your body have what are called alpha-adrenergic receptors that tell them to squeeze shut when adrenaline shows up, the blood vessels in your face are packed with a different type, beta-adrenergic receptors. And when adrenaline hits these specific beta receptors, it triggers relaxation instead of contraction. This molecular difference is the entire key to the paradox. It's a super-targeted, localized response system.
And you know, the very anatomy of our face makes it the perfect stage for this whole biological drama. It's not just one thing, but a whole combination of features that make a blush so obvious. We have a higher density of tiny blood vessels called capillaries. The vessels themselves are a bit wider, and they're all much closer to the surface of the skin. All of that works together to create that rapid and very, very visible flush of color.
So we figured out the strange biological how. But that just leads us to an even deeper question, the evolutionary why. Why would we evolve a mechanism that so clearly advertises our vulnerability and our emotional distress to everyone around us?
I mean, on the surface, it seems like a terrible idea, right? It shows everyone you're flustered, that you've made a mistake, that you feel ashamed. In a high-stakes social world, broadcasting weakness doesn't really sound like a winning strategy. So for a trait like this to have survived for so long, it must have provided some kind of hidden but very powerful advantage.
And that advantage is all wrapped up in this concept, the honest signal. An honest signal is a trait that is physically impossible to fake. You can fake a smile, you can fake an apology, but as Darwin himself pointed out, you absolutely cannot fake a blush.
Because it's an involuntary response controlled by a part of your nervous system you have no conscious control over, it gives off completely trustworthy, unfiltered information about how you're truly feeling inside. Its honesty is its superpower.
And this honest signal does a ton of critical work for us socially. When you break a social rule, a blush is like an immediate, nonverbal apology. It shows other people that you know you messed up and you feel genuine remorse. And that display actually encourages them to forgive you, to feel empathy. In fact, studies have shown that people are way more likely to trust and cooperate with someone who blushes after making a mistake. It works as an appeasement signal. It calms down tension, and it helps repair social bonds, which is absolutely essential for a social species like us.
And this isn't just a cool theory. Research from scientists like Dyke and DeYoung confirms it. They found that, far from just being a source of embarrassment, the blush has real remedial value. In social mishaps, it's a powerful, face-saving tool. It shows you care about what other people think and that you respect the rules of the group, which reinforces your place as a trustworthy member of the community.
But for all its social benefits, the actual experience of blushing can be deeply unpleasant. And for some people, the fear of this involuntary response can become a debilitating burden, creating this awful, vicious cycle of anxiety and avoidance.
This chart shows something really fascinating. In one study, people were scored based on how they thought about blushing. A higher score meant less negative beliefs. People with a low fear of blushing rated it pretty neutrally, around 3.9. But the people with a high fear of it, they held intensely negative beliefs, scoring just 1.7. This shows that people who fear blushing don't just feel uncomfortable. They hold this deeply biased negative judgment about the act itself, convinced that everyone else will judge them harshly for it. This intense fear actually has a clinical name, erythrophobia, and it can get so severe that it leads to social anxiety disorder. People might start avoiding any situation they think will trigger a blush, like public speaking, meetings, or even just casual conversations. This avoidance can cripple their professional and personal lives and has a really profound negative impact on their self-esteem. The very thing that evolved to smooth social interaction becomes a reason to avoid it completely. It's also really important to distinguish excessive blushing from a medical condition it's often confused with, rosacea. Now, while they both involve facial redness, their causes and how they behave are completely different. Emotional blushing is triggered by your psychological state, like anxiety, and it's transient. It goes away once the feeling passes. Rosacea, on the other hand, is a chronic inflammatory skin disease. Its flare-ups can be triggered by all sorts of things: spicy food, sun, stress, and they can last for weeks, often with bumps and visible blood vessels. And what's more, science has given us a clear biological marker for rosacea. Huge genetic studies have identified a specific genetic variant, known as an SNP, that's associated with the disease. This one, RS763035, is located in a part of our genome that's packed with genes related to our immune system. This is strong evidence that rosacea is fundamentally an inflammatory condition with a genetic cause, not just an overactive nervous response. All right, we've journeyed through the paradox, the purpose, and the pathology of blushing. So now, let's bring it all together and recap the incredible biology of our most human expression. So what did we learn? We've seen how the body's fight-or-flight system can trigger a completely paradoxical response in the face, all thanks to those specialized beta-adrenergic receptors. And we've learned that this involuntary flush of color isn't some kind of design flaw. It's a feature, a powerful, honest signal that has helped our species build trust and keep our social groups together for millennia.
And that brings us to one last thought. We live in an age where we so carefully manage our public image, curating this picture of perfect confidence and control. So in a world like that, what is the value of a face that simply cannot lie? Maybe the blush is a vital reminder that beneath all the carefully constructed surfaces we show the world, we are all still undeniably, and quite beautifully, human.